All right, and we're live here on the FanCred app. This is the wild card or weekend edition of the Phenom NFL show, the Sunday episode. I'm Cole Nevins. I'm here alongside my partner Shane Rich after a wild weekend of football to kick off the playoffs. We got a ton to talk about today. We're happy that everyone's here. Hopefully people will join in as we go. We're looking to get a lot of people live on the fan line today. It'll be really nice to take some guests, take some calls, and see what everyone's got to say besides just us about these games this weekend. Shane, what's going on, my man?
Nothing much. You forgot to indicate, dude, it was a super wild card weekend, right? Nickelodeon game was pretty awesome. But I want to start off just for the fans and everyone wondering what the playoff picture is going to look like for next weekend, right? We'll go over the schedule, Cole. So for the NFC matchups are set with the Saints' big win over the Bears. They'll take on the Tampa Bay Bucks at home next week on Sunday, the 2 versus 5 seed. And then the Packers will take on the Rams at home on Saturday at Lambeau. And then for the AFC, the Steelers-Browns game still determines a lot. The lowest remaining seed, either the Ravens, and if the Browns win, they'll take on the Chiefs. And the highest remaining seed plays the Bills.
Real interesting matchups there. And we got one more tonight as well. I believe it's going to be starting while we are doing our show right now. The Cleveland Browns will travel to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers in the divisional rivalry matchup without Kevin Stefanski, which will be quite the interesting dynamic to that game. We'll see how the Browns react, if they can, get their act together despite not having their head coach. I mean, how much does that represent this season to have the Browns finally make the playoffs and their head coach and their longest tenured player, Joel Paidonio, are not able to play in this game?
It's brutal, and it's brutal to the Browns fans too. I mean, this whole year coming into the season, we weren't sure what the Browns were going to look like, right? We weren't sure if it was going to be a debacle and a disappointment like last year. They proved everyone wrong, and to me, I don't want to get into my rankings of Coach of the Year candidates, but Stefanski is clearly one. I mean, the way he's revamped that team, he's taken them from, like we said last week, the factory of sadness to Cleveland being a happy place, right? Similar to the LeBron years in Cleveland. Like, to me, despite what happens tonight, because of the loss of Stefanski, they're a legit team, and we can consider them that going forward. I think he's changed the perspective on Baker Mayfield, right? Their run game with Chubb and Hunt is amazing, and that defense has stepped up tremendously. So I think heading into tonight, the biggest thing is, look, they'll be good to start. It's about the second half adjustments, and I don't know if they'll be capable of that just because they don't have their head coach, right? Stefanski, that's what they were so good at this year, Cole, was their ability to adjust coming into the second half, right? Getting back on top. I mean, they fell apart against your Jets, but everything besides that, they just got it together, and they'll have the first 10 to 15 plays scripted, right? That's easy. Stefanski can control that, but giving Baker that pep talk in the locker room when it's, 17-13 or 17-10, like, that's big, and he won't get that.
Yeah, you talked about that game against the Jets, and there's a thing they didn't do in that game, which pretty much cost them that game, and they didn't prioritize the run game. That was a massive point in that game, and we've been hearing it all week. They have Nick Chubb. They have Kareem Hunt. It's time for them to pound that in. Be the dog pound.
Yeah.
Do it. You got to do it against this Pittsburgh team. It's going to be an ugly, gritty win if they're going to get this victory tonight in the postseason. And to do that, unfortunately, they're going to have to take the ball out of Baker Mayfield's hands and put it into their two dogs in the backfield. So let's actually start reviewing some of the games from this weekend. Starting with the games today, we're actually going to start with the Baltimore-Tennessee game. Baltimore beat the Titans 20-13. Lamar Jackson finally getting that first playoff win after 2 years. Shane, you said this was your favorite game of the weekend, I believe. Is that or is that Buffalo-Indianapolis game ahead?
No, Ravens-Titans to me was my favorite game of the weekend just because it meant so much to both teams, right? The whole year, we'll start with the Titans. We weren't sure whether we should put them in the fraud category or not. They had some big wins, and then they fell apart, right? We expected them to beat Cleveland in that, I think it was week 13 or 14, and they totally fell apart. And then they play a team like the Bills early in the season. They crushed the Bills. So to me, there was a lot we needed to see from them. And Tannehill, statistically, when you look at it, he's a top 5 quarterback. In my rankings, he's not. Numbers say he is. It was a big game for him today, and we saw that interception late that he threw to Marlon Humphrey. Totally ruined their chances. And for the Ravens, like we said, right, they kill bad teams. And when they have to play the good ones and they're in prime time, they fall apart. That's just what it's been with this Ravens team. And I think for Lamar to go into Tennessee today, right, these two teams hate each other. There's no love. We saw the way Lamar stormed off the field after they won. This was so big for Lamar and his career going forward. Because, Cole, imagine we do this show tonight. Titans are moving on. Titans are going to Buffalo or Kansas City. And Lamar's 0-3, right? And Lamar, we're waiting for him to get a massive contract to be the Ravens QB for the next 9 or 10 years, per se. It's just crazy to me. And I'll swing it back to you, but that was, to me, why it was my favorite game today, just because of everything that came with it.
Yeah, we always like to talk about the backstories of these games. It just makes it all that much better. But my biggest headline or takeaway from this game was how not Lamar Jackson was the spotlight, but the Ravens defense was able to hold Tannehill to just 165 yards, and Derrick Henry, the rushing king himself, to 40 yards on 18 carries. That's
and his longest run was 8 yards.
8 yards. That's like the Jets running backs. That's like watching Frank Gore play the whole season.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about absolutely dominating the trend, the credit in the world. And again, people will continue, of course, because it's the offensive side of the ball, it's the flashy Lamar Jackson. People will continue to focus on him. But the Ravens defense needs all the credit from this one. I mean, what a fantastic performance. And the icing on the cake at the end from Marcus Peters, that really great interception off of Tannehill. Still didn't really know what Tannehill was trying to do there. Seemed like a forced desperation throw in a way, down 7 points.
And Khalif Raymond, who he was targeting, I mean, I don't want to blame it all on Tannehill. He totally slipped running that route over the middle. Like, that guy completely fell over.
Yeah, no, definitely had an impact on that play. But the fact that they were able to hold Henry to that performance, it's mind-blowing, Shane. It is absolutely mind-blowing. And look, with Lamar Jackson, again, not a great game in the air. 17 of 24, 179 yards, and a terrible interception, which he went down there and called a dumbass interception.
Yeah, and I actually want to talk about that, Cole. That pick was so bad. And for those that watched the game earlier in the year when the Ravens played the Titans and it went into overtime, Lamar made that same terrible throw early in the game that gave the Titans momentum. And when that happened today, I was just like, dude, you did this, like, you couldn't perfect that, like, you couldn't change that. You had to force that throw. Like, Nick Mullins doesn't do that, and he's the worst quarterback I've ever seen. Like, that throw was so bad. And Lamar Jackson should be thanking everyone on that Baltimore defense, like you said, because they totally saved him today.
Yeah, no, imagine Lamar gets put in that hole. And that's the problem with Lamar and this Ravens offense. Over the course of the season, when they were put in the hole and losing the game, they struggled because they don't play their game. That's the issue. And today, they had this comfortable lead finally. Even take it back to last year in the playoff game. That was one of the first times all season that we saw the Ravens play from behind, and they completely fell apart. I think Lamar had close to 50 passing attempts in that playoff game.
Yeah.
And he played an atrocious game. And it's no surprise that he plays better when he's more comfortable and confident, when he knows his defense is playing at a high level. And it was really refreshing to see for this Ravens team, to see just such a nice bounce back on the defensive end. And look, this is going to be the common theme, of today's show. Me, taking credit for my predictions coming into this week, because again, I'm not going to shy away from them, because I still back them up. I gave good reasoning behind it, and it is what it is. We all lose once in a while.
Well,
but
I picked the Titans. I was back and forth all week with this game, right? Like, I had absolutely no idea.
I was straight on.
To me, the matchup was so even, right? It was so hard to predict, and I ended up going with the Titans just because I thought about it, and I thought about that game earlier this year that went into OT and they won. Like, that was them at full strength. And I know there was speculation with the Ravens. They had to worry about, the Wednesday game that got pushed back to Wednesday. They were worried about the Thanksgiving game. There was so much that came into it, but I just thought the Titans were going to do what they normally do, and I didn't expect much to change, and I was totally wrong, right? I mean, the Titans secondary is so atrocious, and their third down defense, like everyone knows, is the worst in football. Ravens didn't have to worry about that. They ran the ball on first and second down, and that's all they needed to do. They converted on third down. Lamar carrying the ball today through the ground was absolutely phenomenal. We saw the 49-yard touchdown run he had. I mean, it was nuts.
Yeah, going into this game, my thought process was, look, Baltimore has made a living this season off of beating bad teams.
Mm-hmm.
And while they did pick up momentum, which I thought was crucial for them, no matter who they're playing, it's still an NFL win. I just didn't think they were going to be prepared for this game to play a team like the Titans who are riding hot. And, look, including myself, I mean, I'm like the Bill Polian of Lamar Jackson, the Lamar Jackson crowd.
Mm-hmm.
I've always doubted the guy. I never liked him coming out as, not being the traditional pocket passer. I didn't know how it was going to work out. The first season, I was like calling myself a genius because I was like, oh, look, he's going to play terrible in this playoff game. And he did against the then, what were they, the Los Angeles Chargers yet?
They were in the soccer stadium.
I was gonna say the San Diego Chargers, and I was like, I stopped myself. He had a terrible game in that one, and that went into the offseason, carried over. And then he had that whole MVP season. I sat there, and I endured that pain all season. Everyone's, Cole, you're such an idiot. How could you think Lamar Jackson was a boss? Look at Lamar, man. And I'm like, just wait. Once teams start to figure him out, there's going to be a massive switch. And then the first game in the postseason, he was completely neutralized. They said, look who's the genius now. And then coming into this season, I was like, look, this is going to be a completely different year for Lamar. And then he tried to do too much. That was his biggest problem this year. But I think he's found his comfort zone lately.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a huge point for him. And in this game especially, again, we talked about it earlier, he had the confidence boost because they were up in this game towards the end. And, as much as I gave him crap for, being the quote-unquote running back, if it's effective, and that's an issue with it, 16 carries for 136 yards in the score, that's elite. It's absolutely elite. Do I think he's a top 5 quarterback in football anymore? No. But, if he's able to win games like this, you can't complain.
But that's the biggest thing, and I think I've said it every week on this show, but it's the same with Garoppolo last year, right? Just hand the ball to Mostert, you'll win games. That's all you needed to do. And if the storyline going into the offseason is the guy can't throw the ball, so be it. Like, it doesn't matter, right? His best receiver is Hollywood Brown, and we don't think he's that good.
No.
So he doesn't have a lot to work with in the first place. So if
we talk about Hollywood Brown,
like, that's fine to me.
Hollywood Brown in other interesting games that he's been heating up lately, but a lot of his stats have been coming off of just kind of like one great play in the game. He gets into space, he gets a big chunk of yards. I think they need to do a better job of really, and I think they did that today a little bit, of just giving the offensive end.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a guy, and we know this. He's not a great route runner. I don't think he's the smartest football player either, and he struggles to get himself separation despite how fast he is. Because again, it just sometimes doesn't look like he even knows what he's doing out there. But the guy has speed and I guess good enough hands to sometimes make plays. So when they come up with some creative schemes for him and put him into space, I mean, I'll pull my stats right here: 7 catches for 109 yards. That's a great game for him. Look, he's not a number 1 receiver. We know that. He's more of a number 2 and number 3 guy. But when they put him into space today, he did an excellent job. They have to give him credit for that.
And that's what they did so well today. That's what Greg Roman did so well. Was his big thing was, I don't know if anyone else noticed it, but it was they send him in motion. He was in the backfield, and then Lamar would snap the ball, and he's on the left or right side, and he tried to make a play out of the backfield. Like, that works with that guy. Like you said, it's his speed. And, back to the Titans real quick, we have to talk about A.J. Brown. And I tweeted it today, he's a physical specimen. Like, that guy is insane to me. I think he's better than Metcalf. I know that's a hot take.
Oh, I think he's better than, no, it's not a hot take at all. I'm not a big Metcalf fan. I think Metcalf makes a great play once in a while, but I think A.J. Brown as an overall complete receiver is better than DK Metcalf. And I actually don't, I mean, you can debate that. Maybe DK has a bit more raw talent.
Yeah.
But the fact is, A.J. Brown's a more complete receiver. I trust him more in those one-on-one situations.
Yes.
And I think they didn't do a good enough job today of not even just force-feeding him the ball, but, letting him make a play. You saw what happened last week.
Well, you saw a touchdown today, Cole?
Yeah, and this week as well.
Marlon Humphrey.
He's a guy that a quarterback in desperation can trust. He's a one-on-one. And look, I know the Ravens have a really nice secondary, but A.J. Brown is just as good as those guys, if not better. There's no reason.
you're leading on to my point, and that's like Metcalf we saw yesterday. He had, I think, 4 catches for 44 yards on Ramsey, but missed however many. Like, and you saw Metcalf, he's throwing his helmet, he's crying, right? He's losing his mind. Dude, A.J. Brown doesn't care who's lining up on him, right? They have Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey, who are 2 number 1 corners, despite what anyone thinks. Those are 2 top 10 corners in football. And like you said, to your credit, like that's one of the best secondaries in football. He had no easy matchups today, and the guy just played his game. He was phenomenal.
Yep. So right now we're actually going to move on to the second game from today. Before we do that, for everyone who just joined, it's 8:16 Eastern right now. I was going to say 8:15, but now we just got a 1 minute. If you want to join Shane and I live on the show, all you got to do is press that green fan line button. We'll get you on. Ask any question you want about the NFL. It could be an NFL draft question, free agency question, playoff question, whatever you want. We can get that going. So we're actually going to start with our next segment right now. We're getting news that we have one guy in the fan line coming on right now. You know what? We have a Colts fan coming on soon, so why don't we actually skip to that game before we get into the snoozer that was Saints Bears.
Yep.
So Cameron, if we can get Kellen on, that would be really good right now. We can talk about that Colts game.
I'm excited
waiting on that.
What Kellen has to say.
Yeah, hey guys.
How you doing?
Yeah, I just wanted to share some of the thoughts I had after watching the Colts game. It was pretty interesting. Like, I enjoyed watching it. I was up. I was pretty much standing, walking in circles the whole time at the very end, like excited. The first half was nothing that special, but I don't know what else to say besides just like tiny mistakes just keep leading up to their loss. But my main takeaway from this is that the Colts it was pretty obvious. Their management was awful. They had 0 timeouts on their last drive. I mean, they kind of got helped by the refs at the end. I'll admit that was definitely a fumble. And I don't know, just disappointing to see at the end how they I don't know if you guys saw, but the Kamoka Ture jumped off sides.
Yeah.
That play. He was obviously trying to get him to jump the snap, and he got baited right into it.
Yeah, a quick thought on that fumble right there. My biggest takeaway from it was why was he even trying to get up and run again? He had 2 defenders right next to him when he was getting up off the ground, and you're asking for trouble right there. I don't understand. I guess again, it's just one of those classic heat of the moment plays. But why was he getting up off the ground to even attempt to get the extra 1 yard? He put the ball at risk and the game at risk, and they should have lost from then. But I guess it's the legend of Phillip Rivers coming in and getting that second chance. And even more than that, why did they not put in Jacoby Brissett for that Hail Mary, who probably would have had a much
that makes sense to me. Was that like their goodbye to Phillip Rivers? I mean, Kellen, you know this more than we both do, but like Jacoby Brissett is their option and Hail Mary specialist. Like that's what he does.
Yeah, and at the end there, because I mean, they were trying to get in field goal range. They were like around the 50-yard line. They were trying to get about 10, 15 more yards for Blankenship, but they were just like they weren't. He had already missed. This season, he had taken 3 50-yard or 50-yard plus field goals, I'm pretty sure, and he only made 1. So, I mean, it was pretty much like there's no point in trying. It was like it would have been 65 yards, the record field goal. So, I mean,
he botched the 37-yarder earlier in the game.
Yeah, he hit it off the right.
Yeah, the doink, yeah.
Yeah, and he's been great all year. I mean, I'm not going to complain and bring him down, but because I love Blankenship.
How do you not?
Yeah, that of him saying like building Legos was great, but like back to that Hail Mary, like I mean, before that they were just kind of like they had 20 seconds left. They were just throwing quick passes to the side to try to just stop.
But those passes were so low percentage. I was literally scratching my head while I was watching. I'm like, what is Rivers doing right now, or what's the Colts offense doing? It was like, I mean, there was obviously the 3 plays after the fumble, but the plays prior to that, it just looked like they were just throwing desperation passes when they should have been in that 1-2 minute drill trying to get yards and putting Blankenship in a 45, 46-yard field goal range. Yeah. But it just looked like they were trying to force the ball down the field, and there was just no purpose to what they were doing. And I was like, what in the world is this offense doing right now? They really deserve to lose that game at the end. And
I also, one of my biggest takeaways from this game too is I didn't understand the 2-point conversion, right? After
who scored?
Was it Jonathan Taylor or was it Jack Doyle?
It was 24-16. I think it was Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, it was the Jonathan Taylor touchdown, and they went for 2. You didn't need to. It was just, and I think we give Frank Reich so much credit, right? He's a great head coach. He's a great QB blossomer. He knows what he's doing. He can develop guys nicely, right? He's put together a really nice offense. But yesterday it was so poor. It just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, the Michael Pittman drop, that was brutal. It was a poor throw by Rivers to me, and he just couldn't come down with it. But there was just so much, and I think we've hit on all of it, that just didn't go their way, but it was also so ridiculous. And it was like, Kellen, to your credit, like you said, it was just poor game management.
Yeah, like it was just frustrating to watch because that 2-point conversion, sure, it didn't really end up hurting them as much as it could have in the end because they held the next drive, they held Buffalo to a field goal, and their defense showed up pretty nice that game. And then they scored again with Jack Doyle. Philip Rivers was doing great using the tight ends, actually. Trey Burton.
And both of them.
Yeah, Mo Cox.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, he was doing pretty good, actually. I didn't have any complaints until that last part. And then that Hail Mary, it just felt like it was in the air forever. And then none of the receivers were there to even contest. It was just Micah Hyde, I'm pretty sure it was him, just like swatted it straight down. And it was just kind of like, yeah, there's no hope. It was 2.5. They had 2.5 minutes from wherever they started, like the 10, 15-yard line with the 2-minute warning, no timeouts. And it's just the other timeouts. If you were watching there were so many potential game or delay of game calls that they could have called on the Colts. They're just snapping it with like 0 seconds right on the clock.
And that was a lot of games yesterday. Like I noticed that was casual for those Seahawks too.
Yeah, the refs. I mean, I'm not gonna try to put this on the refs, but because they helped the Colts more than they didn't. But they were also a lot of times when the receivers were kind of like pushing each other, and there was some potential pass interference calls. But they just weren't calling much. It's just how the game went.
Kellen, before you go, man, I'm putting on the spot right now. You can only answer with 2 words. All right, who will be the Colts' starting quarterback in 2021?
Who will be, or who I want to be?
Fine, give both.
Okay, who it will be, Philip Rivers. Who I want to be, Matthew Stafford.
Wow.
Very interesting. All
right.
That. Thank you for coming on.
You doesn't want Mullins? You don't want Nick Mullins?
Or Darnold. You can take Darnold from us too.
Yeah, we're selling our quarterback, so.
All right. Take care, my man.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, that was Kellen, big Colts fan himself. If you want to come on the show just like Kellen, talk about your favorite team in a playoff game, talk about any game, we're down to do it. We got all the time in the world. We got 37 minutes left in the show and plenty of football to talk about. So actually, let's talk about the team we didn't mention once in that entire segment, the Buffalo Bills. A strong game from them. I think a few more people thought that they were going to have more of a significant victory on the Colts in this game, coming off of just all the momentum they've had lately. But still a solid enough performance from them. Josh Allen had some nice plays. I think he still needs to find his playoff groove. You know, it's another reason why I just don't think yet he's at that number 1 tier of quarterbacks. I think right now he's on that number 2 tier, and he's fine there. And that's a great thing. He shouldn't be upset about that. But it showed that he still needs some playoff maturity, just like every other quarterback, and no quarterback is perfect in the playoffs. But you see some of the plays that he makes, and he's on a national scale now, showing everyone that this offense is tailor-made for him. And there was just one throw that he had. It literally just looked like he just flicked the ball with his wrist, Aaron Rodgers style, down the field. And it was just beautiful to watch. And the biggest thing from Josh Allen that I recognized was now they're more willing to have him run the ball because he's a big dude.
Yeah,
he can get down the field like that.
11 carries.
They were talking about this in the broadcast, and they were saying how throughout the season they were kind of a little scared to let him run the ball like that as he did in the past few seasons because of A, how well they were passing the ball, and B, the fact that they knew that they were going to go forward. There was no putting his body at risk. But now you're in the postseason right now, and you can put everything on the line. Expect a heavy dose of Josh Allen going forward because talk about a run threat with him. He's the best running back on that team. That's the reality of it. Not only can he throw the ball like a madman, but he can run the ball too.
And that's the biggest thing, Cole, is I think because it's playoff time, you have to let him be more willing to use his body and go ahead running the ball. I noticed it in week 17 when they played the Dolphins. In the first half, Allen played. He was scrambling a little bit and running and taking these hits. I'm like, dude, why are you doing that? Right? Save that next week against the Colts. Do your thing next week. And that was the biggest thing. Now, like you said, he's a tier 2 quarterback. He's having an MVP caliber season, no doubt. I'm a big fan of Allen, right? He's awesome. He's been spectacular. I think Stephon Diggs is the best thing that's happened to the guy. He's taken both of their games to another level. And that was the big thing yesterday. That's all they needed to do was find Stephon Diggs, right? Cole Beasley's going to be there over the middle and in the flat. I think Gabriel Davis had a nice game. And I think they did a good job. Like, you knew you weren't going to beat the Colts by running the ball on them. You can't. Just with that front seven, they weren't capable of it, and they didn't do it. They threw the ball. I'm actually interested to see going forward because we're giving a lot of credit to the Bills' offense, but I think we need to reevaluate the Bills' defense, right? Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, they're awesome in that secondary, but I just don't see them keeping up with the Chiefs. I really don't. I think if a Colts team with an aged Phillip Rivers and how reliable, like how much they rely on guys like Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman who are rookies, and they put up 24 and kept the game that close, I don't know, Cole. I don't see them keeping it, interesting with the Chiefs.
I have no doubt that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to make it to the Super Bowl in the AFC. I already went over this on my show on Friday. I think it's going to be Chiefs-Packers, but we'll have to see.
I agree.
Especially after that Saints performance today, nothing really convincing. I guess we'll segue into that right now. Saints beat the Bears 21-9 today. I like to call it 21-3 because that was the epitome of a garbage time touchdown by the MVP, Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, credit to the fans for voting him. Got to give Mitch some respect when he needs it. But an abysmal game from Trubisky, 19 of 29, 199 yards in that garbage time touchdown at the end. Montgomery couldn't get it going, 12 for 31. I mean, at least that's more yards per carry than Derrick Henry today, but nothing to brag about at all. But what killed this game for the Bears was that Wims drop in the end zone. Talk about a momentum shifter.
Terrible.
And I tuned into the Barstool live broadcast with Big Cat
amazing.
after watching, and they were saying, you're only down 7, and then Big Cat, and he's, as much as he's an entertainer, he knows his stuff about football as well. And he goes, I don't care. This is going to be the play that this is going to stay in their heads the whole game, and there's no recovering from this. And they were only down 7 points at the time. I have to remind you guys of that. But that's such a confidence killer, and even for Wims as well, because Trubisky made a fantastic throw to Wims on the sideline. And then they ran and they execute a beautiful trick play. And they went right through the breadbasket. It was like DK Metcalf's drop last
terrible,
night.
Yeah.
Right through his heads.
Where's DK? Get DK on the show.
I'm sure we can beat him up on there. But oh my God, yeah, no. So Mitch couldn't get it going. That was the reality. And this Bears offense just looked absolutely stagnant tonight. I thought the Saints were going to win this game the whole time. I picked them straight up.
Yeah.
But I had Chicago plus 10 in this one. I just against the spread picks. But I just expected more than 9 points from them. I mean, because I was not surprised at all that the Saints put up 21 points. My prediction going to this game, I actually tweeted this out. I said it's going to be a low score. I don't think the Saints right off the bat are going to be able to get the gears going.
Which they didn't.
With Breeze just not being good all season, simply. Kamara being out all week and the week before, and Michael Thomas just coming back and not much on the offense outside of that trio. And they didn't. And the Bears have an elite defense, and they were a good enough defense to stop the Saints, and they were able to do that. And my mindset was, all right, this game's going to end in like a 7 to 9 point game or 10-point game. But, New Orleans, I mean, this is a hard game to judge because Chicago is just so bad on offense. But their defense, you got to give them some credit because Mitch was playing good football lately. I think we have to give them credit. It's still a 12-point win or 18-point win if you don't count that garbage time touchdown. But we'll have to see what they do next week when they get more of a real test. Who are they playing again? Forgot what you said earlier.
Who, the Saints?
Yeah.
They host the Bucs next week.
All right, so that would be a really interesting game. I mean, considering the last time they played was that Sunday night game?
38-3.
Yeah, I mean, see if they can replicate that game against a Buccaneers team that, really didn't have a didn't have a fantastic performance against Washington. So, any other thoughts on this game?
Well, yeah, I want to talk about the Saints real quick and their offense. And I know the motive this season has been Breeze and how he's fallen off and how he should really consider retirement after Contavious Street totally annihilated and broke all of his ribs. But in all seriousness, Drew Brees wasn't bad today, right? He put on a good show and he did enough for them to win, especially against a good Bears defense. And credit to the Saints O-line. Brees didn't get sacked once today. I mean, I think there were about 12 to 15 hurries on him, but they totally contained guys like Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and Robert Quinn. There was little to no pressure on Brees. And if they can do that going forward, especially against an awesome front seven that the Bucs have, they'll have no problem beating them for a third time this year. And the Saints secondary, I mean, is the Bears offense terrible and is Nagy terrible? Yes, we knew that, but they totally stopped their playmakers today. I mean, Allen Robinson, I think he had 6 or 7 catches today for 50 yards. Like you said, David Montgomery he was held to 31 yards of offense, and the biggest storyline for their offense is how productive he's been, but they totally shut him down. And if you're gonna put the Saints in the Super Bowl, right, and you think they're a true contender, you're going to back it up with how well – I'm just saying, but if you're going to back it up with how good their defense is and how well they play and their ability to just – they shut down anyone at any given time, and I think that's their specialty.
Yeah, they're going to win a lot of games like this if they're going to make it to the Super Bowl and then Breeze's last season. So let's actually segue to the Buccaneers game right now. And again, just as a reminder that we're now at the halfway mark of our show. If you want to join us, just click the fan line button, get on with us, and we can chat. So we're actually getting notice that Cleveland's up 14-0 right now.
There we go.
Could be a massive game there. I'm very excited to watch that once the show is over. You can go simulcast right now. 2 shows at once. You can watch the Browns game and our show at the same time. Tampa Bay beat Washington 31-23 in the Taylor Heineke game. Almost. I mean, it would have been nice to see him pull off that 2-minute drive at the end, but unfortunately he couldn't get it done. Again, not reading into this game way too much. It was still a 7-9 team despite playing in this playoff game with a 4th-string quarterback, and it was just, I mean, look, he put together a gritty performance. That's exactly what
well.
That's exactly what he needed to do.
No, he's legit. He's not bad.
He did not play poorly at all. He had a very nice, again, that extra motivation. A gritty performance from a motivated quarterback. I love that from Washington. I think it got their team going. But with Tampa Bay, I think they just were able to get that edge on them the entire game. Brady had a decent game. He threw around 50%, 22 of 40, but still 381 yards and 2 touchdowns. Fournette finally got going, and that was huge for them in this game. 19 carries for 93 yards. They got Evans going, which is huge off that injury as well. Godwin and Brown got involved. If they're clicking all cylinders, I hate to say it, but they have the ability to beat anyone in this league if the defense is clicking. I just don't think that this Bucs team is going to be the team that makes it all the way.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I have Tampa going up against Green Bay in the NFC Championship game. They're my pick. I think it's hard for the Saints to beat a team 3 times in a season, and I don't think they do that to Brady. But with the Bucs, I think this game was farther apart than most made it seem. They had the garbage time touchdown, right, that Heineke had. Absolute dot to Steven Sims, right? I was really impressed with Brady last night, especially against that front 4 that Washington has. I think the Bucs O-line is all right. I mean, Tristan Wirfs had a lot on him, the rookie, with Chase Young and Montez Sweat coming at him on the end. But Brady was phenomenal. He threw for 381 yards. That Washington defense is no joke. Like, they're legit. They're awesome. And I was so impressed with how Brady stepped up in the pocket. We talked about, earlier in the season, he couldn't make throws downfield. You constantly crapped on him for it, Cole. He stepped up so much with that, right? His deep ball looks natural. His deep ball looks the way it did in the mid-2000s to Randy Moss. I mean, it looked legit. Mike Evans, he was the concern going in, whether or not he'd play, and his health. He was phenomenal, right? He had 119 yards. Cameron Brate stepped up. Antonio Brown got the ball. Chris Godwin got going last week, had a pretty good game. Like, they got it going.
Yeah, definitely not suspicious at all that Brady's deep ball and arm has gotten stronger as he's 43 years old. I mean, Definitely not something that anyone should be even, remotely worried or suspicious about. It's totally
Cole, in
normal.
all seriousness,
At 43 years old, his arm is still improving.
those touchdowns to Chris Godwin,
They were good throws.
Antonio Brown were phenomenal. And he had one throw totally across his body and across the field to Mike Evans to put them, I think, at the 5 or 6 yard line, setting up in the Leonard Fournette score. But he was so spot on last night, and
yeah.
I think that carries into next week.
We'll see how he does against the team record next week, something that he hasn't been able to do well all season against. Again, this is a 7-9 team. I'm not trying to, give him all the credit in the world for beating them, but it's a good performance. They're still a top half defense in the league, I think, regardless of their record, and they still put together a decent offensive performance. But again, let's see how they perform next week. It will be a really interesting decision to see where people go in terms of that Saints-Bucks game. Again, you mentioned it's hard to beat the team 3 times in the season, but playoffs are a new mentality, and the best team wins. So we'll see what happens in that one. I guess we'll move on to another game right now. Let's talk.
There we go, baby. My favorite game of the day.
Let's talk about Rams Seahawks 30-20. Cole and Shane win in this one because both teams played terrible, and Shane had more confidence that his 49ers are going to bounce back next year. And look, I will never ever forgive the Rams for winning that game against the Jets way back in the year of 2020. But at least they got us a few higher picks because of the Jamal Adams trade. And I mean, first of all, Jamal Adams comes in with a dirty hit on the Rams quarterback, John Wall. It was terrible, and now he's in the hospital. And Jamal's like, "That's just the way I play," And I'm like, "All right, Jamal, let's calm down, man."
Terrible in coverage. He's the worst.
He was horrible. Oh my God. He was the Cup was in double coverage, and they threw it up to him, and little Cup goes and gets it over to Adams. I mean, I'd pay 2 first-round picks for that coverage and the 3rd rounder and Bradley McDougall. I mean, Joe Douglas absolutely fleeced the Seahawks on that trade. But look, Seattle, just another terrible performance, but it's not surprising because they have not been good for the past 8-9 weeks. I think since week 10, Russell Wilson hasn't even had a 300-plus yard passing game.
Yeah,
or throwing for more than 2
he was terrible yesterday.
He was abysmal yesterday, and there's really no excuses about it because he has a really great running back in Chris Carson, 2 elite weapons in Lockett and Metcalf, and the defense just did not have a great game. And Wilson had that pick 6. 23 points to the Rams playing with Jared Goff, who was using 4 fingers the whole game.
Yeah.
It was atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. But credit for the Rams is sticking. I mean, Goff went 9 of 19 in this game, and they left 23 points to them. That is horrible. Horrible.
It's so bad. And I mean, obviously, anyone that knows me knows I'm a Seahawks hater. I don't like the Rams either, but just to watch the Seahawks lose wildcard weekend is so great. You saw Jamal Adams smoking the cigar 2 weeks ago, talking about a hat and T-shirt week. And then the best part of yesterday's game was Jalen Ramsey walking off the field and said, "Take your T-shirts and hats to God." I mean, that's phenomenal. And
dude, Ramsey is awesome, man. Ramsey is awesome. He is an unbelievable corner.
I know.
That's what you trade 2 first-round picks for. Not Jamal Adams.
Yeah, that's coverage right there.
That's coverage.
Jamal Adams should take notes. But, I mean, I want to talk about – and look, people may listen to me right now and be like, Shane, why are you talking? Your team didn't make it. That's – I mean, we had 15 guys on IR, but besides the point. And Russell Wilson, if you're listening to this, I mean, Nick Mullins beat the Rams, and that's the best defense in football. But, I mean, Seattle was a complete joke yesterday. That's all – Russell Wilson went 11 for 27. Look, I get Darius Williams, Jalen Ramsey. Their secondary's crazy, right? They have all.
Aaron Donald didn't even play for most of the second half.
Exactly, he got hurt.
He was horrible.
That's my point. And you have everyone talks about let Russ cook. Do we really want to do that? He has all the talent in the world around him. DK Metcalf, who you all claim is the next Megatron, right? Tyler Lockett's phenomenal. He had that awesome one-handed grab, but he has all this talent around them, and they've been nothing but terrible for most of the season, right? Everyone talked about Russell Wilson. It's his MVP year. I mean, listen, I picked him to win MVP. I picked them to win the NFC West, right? I thought the Jamal Adams trade would be effective. I didn't think this defense would be as bad as it is. And to back me up. The first 4 weeks of the season, I was right. Wilson looked like the MVP, clearly. I mean, he was lighting teams up. Whether you want to agree with that or not, he was phenomenal.
No, objectively he was, but again, objectively he was terrible for the last.
And they fell apart, and that was the biggest headline. And it's scary to think about because they did that against a Rams team that didn't have a true quarterback. Goff threw with 9 hands. Goff had 9 fingers yesterday, right? Cooper Kupp was coming. He was activated off the COVID-19 list. Like, it's no joke. It's like, are the Rams legit to me? No, right? Goff, I don't know what's been going on with that guy recently, but it was just hard. The Seahawks were not a good 12-4 team, and they weren't a good division winner.
Yeah, no, we see Shaker in the comments, the Seahawks fan himself, talking about Russell Wilson. This man is being paid $35 million to do what? I mean, it's true. If you're getting paid $35 million, you have no excuse but to be that guy that steps up in the postseason and play. He's being paid as a tier 1 NFL quarterback to complete 11 passes in a wild card game is disgusting. It is disgusting. It is unacceptable. You can't defend that. Seattle's going to have to take a long look in the mirror because now they're back 2 first-round picks because of this Adams trade, and they had an abysmal performance in this one. They haven't had – I think I saw a stat. They haven't won a playoff game since 2014 where they let up a touchdown or the other team scored a touchdown. I'm not even kidding when I say that. They've won the only 3 games that they've won since their 2 Super Bowl runs, which I think 2013, 2014. There were 3 games where the other team didn't score a touchdown.
Yeah, and
that's insane. They have not been good for over half a decade in the playoffs.
And you're right, but you don't blame Russell Wilson for that. I mean,
I don't blame him.
Here's my biggest thing. I look at it like this, right? And I'm not going to go into what the Seahawks could have or should have done this past offseason, but you bring in Carlos Hyde. I don't even know the salary numbers, but I'm just going to say this, right? You make the Jamal Adams trade. Is he one of the 5 best safeties in football? Maybe. Definitely not coverage-wise. But, right, you have to pay him a big contract. Bobby Wagner is going to be one of the highest paid linebackers in football. Fine, he's the best linebacker in football. But then you bring in guys like Greg Olsen, right? And you bring in guys like Philip Dorsett, and you bring in guys like Carlos Hyde. Like, you don't need those guys on your offense. You don't need them. Keep DJ Dallas on his cheap rookie deal he has. Have him back up Chris Carson. They were way more effective like that. Carlos Hyde's a good running back. You don't need him. And you're a major fantasy football player, Cole. You know Will Disley and you know Jacob Hollister. Those could easily be your 1 and 2 tight ends. You don't need Greg Olsen. My biggest point is Wilson worth the $35 million? Yes. Should he stick around? Yes, he's a franchise quarterback. The money needs to be spent elsewhere, and it needs to be spent on that defense because that's ultimately what let them up. Did Wilson miss 16 throws and only complete 11 yesterday? Yes, right? We saw that. Was he good? No, not at all. But you have to look elsewhere with your money. It's not smart. I don't think they've done a good job in the front office in the past few years.
I completely agree with you. And look again. I don't think Russell Wilson's a bad quarterback by any means. Mm-hmm. He's still a top 6. I mean, again, it's hard to judge because he had such a 2-sided season. When he's at his best, he plays like a top 4 quarterback. When he's at his worst, he's below average. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was factually below average for more than half the season, including this playoff game. It's just the reality of it. So look, I don't think he's worth the money that he's getting right now, but the fact that I have to deal with it right now, and right now, you said they're not dealing with the correct way. I think all parties take blame on this one, but notice that the Browns are up 21-0. So I guess in Cleveland right now, they probably don't want us to turn on this game for superstition reasons. So maybe we shouldn't watch the rest of this game if we want Cleveland to win. Probably they'll turn it on, and then Pittsburgh will start turning it up. I mean, we got to keep it going. That caps off a terrible week for me on the betting line. I mean, I obviously didn't put anything down. I'm just saying, what's it called? Just I put out on Twitter my wild card weekend predictions, and it's just been an absolute disaster. But again, I guess that perfectly sums up what I've been saying for 2-3 months now, that this NFL season is wildly unpredictable, and it's really been any given Sunday this whole year. That's been the theme of the season, because again, we're just at a point where everyone is so discombobulated with everything going on. Keep Stefanski in a basement. It's just crazy to me. But I mean, I guess we'll see what happens in the second half. There's still plenty of game left, but I mean, 21-0. That's going to be really hard for a crappy Pittsburgh offense to come back from. Any thoughts on that?
Colt, we just spent time talking about what happened. Well, Colt, we were talking about. No, I want to move on. I want to talk about, so Russell Wilson, right? You talked about his salary numbers and everything that's gone on with him. Let's talk about Deshaun Watson and the buzz going on with him, right? How he reportedly wants out of Houston. Everything intact with that, where he wants to be on a contender. He hates that they didn't interview Eric Bieniemy for the head coaching job. He wasn't a part of the GM search. A lot frustrating Deshaun Watson. What are your thoughts on him? What are your thoughts on his motives? What are your thoughts on how he's approaching everything?
So I already went over this on Friday, so I have all the momentum in my head and my thoughts from the other day. So I have a nice base because I kind of was going on the fly when I was talking about it on Friday. And now I have a better understanding of what I really think is going to happen. And look, this applies for all sports, and they always apply this philosophy. If your quarterback, especially your leader, is not on good terms with the team, it's very hard to dig out of that hole. And unfortunately, I think they're going to have to find out a way to make it work. And I know it sucks. It absolutely sucks to trade a quarterback and a franchise player like Deshaun Watson. But the same thing when the Jets had Jamal Adams, it's one of those things where you just have to work something out because it's going to take over your team for the whole season. It's just going to be surrounded by this headline and the stigma around Deshaun Watson, and there's going to be that disconnect between the front office and your franchise quarterback.
It's just not good.
And if they don't keep it up for another season, all Deshaun Watson has to do is just leave. But again, he's on that big extension now. I forgot.
And he can leave his no trade clause.
Yeah, but in terms of destinations, because that's the more fun thing to talk about.
And trade packages.
Trade packages. There's a few teams in the list.
Mm-hmm.
The most notable one was the one that was mentioned this morning, the Miami Dolphins. I mean, I was talking about this on my show. I'm ready to give up on Tua already, not because I think Tua's a bad quarterback. It's because I don't understand why the Miami Dolphins drafted him if they were going to have no confidence in him. I mean,
clearly,
could it potentially be because he's just not 100% yet? A possibility. Maybe he's still recovering from a significant injury.
And the drop-off from weapons at Alabama to the NFL.
But, he's coming out there, and I'm watching the body language in these games, and they just don't trust him, Shane. They don't.
No, they're not confident.
And they're not confident, and they'd rather put Fitzpatrick in. And I'm a huge believer in the relationship between an offensive coordinator / head coach, whoever's calling the plays, and the quarterback. And they're hiring a new offensive coordinator because Chan Gailey resigned from Miami. So whoever this next guy brings in, they have the assets to make a trade for Deshaun Watson. They have the number 3 overall pick. They have a quarterback who was just picked in the top 10. They have they had the 35th pick from the Texans as well, and they have other picks around, and they didn't make the playoffs, so it's not a super high pick, and they have other assets. They could put together probably the best package to get Deshaun Watson from Houston. Right. And Deshaun Watson would be happy about it, as opposed to going to a team like the Jets who are in a full rebuild, because Miami has that upcoming defense right now that they can build a team around with Watson. So it's a really interesting situation here. I think Miami has the assets to pull it off. It's just a matter if Houston, with their new regime and the new head coach and the new guys on offense, if they are willing to pull the trigger and say, all right, our team's 4-12 right now. We don't have our first and second round pick. Our quarterback is disgruntled. Let's just press the big red button, reset it, start from scratch. And look, again, it sucks to have to trade Watson. It really does. But you can't just keep going on with it like this.
Here's the deal, and we'll get into the trade packages of it. But there's a reason why Miami's so attractive, and that's because there's different ways to look at Tua. And like you said, it's his injury history, right? Do we know if he's playing at 100%? Do we know if that's all he's capable of? Is it the lack of confidence Miami had in Tua? Is it the amount of time they gave to Fitzpatrick when they thought Tua was sluggish? Is it the lack of weapons that he had in Miami? And, I'm not saying the Texans have awesome receivers, especially after the DeAndre Hopkins trade, but give me Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobb, Will Fuller, and their running backs over Devontae Parker and the 4 or 5 backup running backs they have, like that's just how I look at it. And there's different things to look at. But to me, if you're the Dolphins and you're calling the Texans and their new GM, is it Nick Caserio? He was a part of
Nick Caserio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you're offering Tua, and let's just say Caserio, who I actually think the Pats were high on. I think the Pats were high on Tua. Let's just say Caserio's a fan of Tua. And it's the 3rd overall pick they lost in the Tunsil trade. That goes back to them, and a first-round pick this year. I think that's enough in exchange for Watson. And look, if
I think they give up more.
Yeah, and the thing is they could, because Watson's that good. And then there's the other teams to look at, right? Like the Niners. There's definitely a world in which Shanahan and Lynch look at each other and say, look, if we want to be Super Bowl contenders for a longer period of time and we're willing to pay Watson's contract, ship Jimmy G, because Caserio was a part of that staff that was in favor of starting Garoppolo over Brady. Anyone that knows football knows that, right? He was definitely on Belichick's side with that. Maybe there's a world in which the Niners say, hey, Houston, you can have our first-round pick this year, our first-round pick next year, a day 2 pick this year and next year, and Garoppolo, take on his contract, right? There's a world in which that happens. There's different suitors for this, and it's a lot to look at. I think Houston needs to reevaluate, and they need to sit down with Deshaun. And it's like, look, do you really not want to be here? Is that really what you want? Because we know we can get a lot for you, but you need to come to conclusion. Is it you're frustrated with one little thing? Can we move on from it? Because if not, then you should be out the door.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right in the head right there. It's a perfect segment. But here at 28-0 Browns. Oh my goodness. Oh my God, that's mind-blowing. 28-0, unbelievable. But going back to Watson, there can be some interesting trade packages. Let's see, maybe my Jets put together a package with the 2nd overall pick and the 2 Seahawks.
You're not going to the Jets.
And no, I'm just putting it out there. I think it's going to take 3 first-round picks to get him, and the Jets have the most cap space in the league. If they were to offer the number 2 pick with how well Justin Fields has been playing lately, plus the 2 Seahawks picks, plus maybe another pick. They have the extra other picks from the Seahawks as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying those are intriguing packages. If you are to go into a full rebuild and you want to start with a quarterback and not have to get Ryan Fitzpatrick next season to go under center for the Texans, it's just an interesting proposition. I don't think the Jets are going to do it, but again, to get that legit guy, not to worry and see if Justin Fields is going to be that guy, just how they had to see if Sam Darnold was going to be that guy. I'd give up anything to get Deshaun Watson, to be honest. It's worth it.
You'd give up anything for a winning season.
It's worth it because you know what you're getting, Shane.
You'd give up Lindor for a winning season.
It's just how you talked about the Niners a few weeks ago and said, Matt Stafford, you know what you're getting. You're getting a broken back in week 10. But that's the thing. You know what you're getting with Watson. You have an entire career left of productive football from him, and you're not waiting to see if Justin Fields can hit that ceiling. So I guess to close off the show right here, hit that full reset button. Houston has the opportunities to make that happen. So we'll see what they do there.
Well, cool. Just real quick, for your Jets, let Joe Douglas know when he gets fired, Deshaun Watson has to be a part of the next GM search because he's going to get very upset again if he's not. So do you want to go through a trade package? Because I have mine, and it involves
I need my trade machine for that one.
Well, I have mine, and it actually involves, just to entertain real quick, it involves the Houston Rockets and a move to send James Harden to the Miami Heat. So the deal, Miami receives James Harden, Deshaun Watson, the remainings of Astroworld, and a day 3 NFL pick. And the Rockets and Texans acquire Tua, the 3rd pick, their other first-round pick, a day 2 pick, Andre Iguodala, Kelly Olynyk, and Duncan Robinson. That's my trade.
Wouldn't that be quite the sight?
I guess
the 4-team dual city trade.
Yeah.
Guess we'll roll with that. Maybe that won't make the TikTok for Phenom. An interesting proposition there. We'll see. Oh, you're such an idiot. You can't even do that. That's not even legal. I'm sure we'll get some.
Anything's possible.
I'm sure we'll get some biters on TikTok to be like, oh, what does this kid think he's talking about? No, they can't take a joke these days.
And just to be fair, I did the trade machines. I combine. It works. For anyone that has an issue.
Oh my goodness! All right, I think it's a perfect way to end off the show. I think people are itching to watch this Browns game right now. I guess I'll continue the Sunday night tradition watching with Shane. But that's gonna do it for today. Thank you for those who stayed on to listen once again. We'll see you guys next week. Hopefully I have some more entertaining games. This was a great week of football, and we still got 3 quarters left. I just got to beat all right, teams have come back from 28-point deficits in playoff history. 1992, the Bills 32 points against the Houston Oilers. 2013, the Colts 28 points against the Kansas City Chiefs. That's it. Thanks, Dan Ravel. Something that one of the few things that guy is even remotely helpful for. But we'll see what happens. I guess it's not over yet, but we've seen
Big Ben Luck in retirement real quick, Cole. That's how you should end it.
Yeah, no, fine. It's been real, Ben Roethlisberger.
Ben. Thank you.
You and Drew Brees can hold hands out there and retire together, and that will be perfect. All the Super Bowls I predicted for Steelers and Saints, I guess, will end perfectly. I probably predicted that for like 3 straight years and never learned my lesson. So I guess finally they can just go on the right step, which is just playoff exits. So that's gonna do it for today. For the 3rd time saying that. Have a great night. Enjoy the game, and we will see you next week.
See you guys. Thank you.